Apollo missions ended because the extraterrestrials that were already on the moon prevented bases to be established on the moon. This is what W.Tomkins has been telling us. You can find his various speeches about this on YouTube videos. W.Tomkins was also, when he was quite small, witness to the LA lights in 1942, February 42, in Los Angeles. And now, as he was growing up, he told us that he became an engineer and he was a designer of U.S. Aircraft carriers for the Navy. And later, he was also the designer for the spaceships for space travel and interstellar travel. And he goes on to explain that he's been authorized to tell people, like a soft disclosure type of a thing, that there are secret space programs, one of them being Solar Warden, for example, and that they have had anti-gravity aircraft for quite some time. And not only that, they have moon bases and Mars bases. And he did say that, well, how can they have moon bases? So the question is that since the ETs told us not to go back to the moon, how is it that they have moon bases? But anyway, the U.S. Navy planned to put out 10,000 people onto the moon in the early 1970s as part of a secret lunar base program that was to be established through NASA's Apollo program. And according to this Mr. W.Tomkins, he passed away recently, a top aerospace designer who worked for major NASA corporations, contractors during the Apollo era. The covert Navy plan came to an end during the Apollo 11 mission when Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin were met by a fleet of menacing extraterrestrial spacecraft when they went to the moon. Tompkins' account of what really happened there is explained in his recently published autobiography titled Selected by Extraterrestrials. At the time of the moon landing, Tompkins worked for TRW, a leading aerospace corporation that built the first NASA satellite, Pioneer 1. TRW was responsible for a range of critical components used in Apollo spacecraft, and his personnel were in the Operations Center for Apollo missions. And Tompkins was a TRW employee from July of 1967 to March of 1971, and described his role in helping design the Launch Operations Center at Cape Canaveral, Florida. Earlier, during the first 2 years of his 12-year employment at Douglas Aviation Company, from 50 to 63, Tompkins' innovative designs for planned Apollo missions had generally impressed Dr. Kurt Dubis. Okay, this is the Tompkins drawing of NASA's live feed of starships at the edge of the Siem Tranquility Crater, the menacing craft looking over the rim towards Apollo 11 astronauts. And this is how they explained it to him. But they were also standing right next to their craft, intimidatingly looking at the astronauts. Now, going back to this, the missions that greatly impressed Dr. Dubis. In July 1962, Dubis had become the first director of NASA's Launch Operations Center, renamed Kennedy Space Center after John F. Kennedy, a position he held until his retirement in November 1974. In 1963, Dubis appointed Tompkins to a working group for the future Launch Operations Center. The two held many meetings, confidential meetings over the future of the Apollo program, and discussed the real mission as part of an ambitious Navy space program called NOVA for secretly establishing military garrisons on the Moon and Mars, and also nearby star systems, other solar systems. The Apollo mission moon landings were only the first stage of the four-stage plan for NOVA. Stage 2 of NOVA was to put 10,000 people on the moon, and stage 3 was to place bases on Mars and other planetary bodies in our solar system, and then finally stage 4 was to place manned Navy bases in 12 adjoining star systems. Now, to support his claims, his radical claims, Tompkins provided documents in his autobiography. The first is the 1963 Douglas Aviation Company study of the launch vehicles to be used in the Covert Nova program. And the second is an April 15, 1963 memorandum from the Douglas Aviation Company. It confirms Tompkins' appointment by Dr. Dubis to the Launch Operations Center and the designs he was working for on NASA. Tompkins describes he designed the Apollo missions and Nova. But you know, the thing is that when you listen to his interviews on the various YouTube videos, he never discusses the problems that we are taught that the moon and Mars may have. For example, there's no atmosphere, there's no water, there's extreme cold and heat. What type of habitats would the inhabitants, the human inhabitants of these colonies on the moon and Mars have? Where would they get their fundamental necessities from? Air, water, food. He never discusses problems like that. How would they protect themselves from the immense solar radiation and cosmic radiation bombarding them 24/7? He never ever talks about these problems. He, I don't know, are we supposed to believe that the environment of the moon and Mars is just like the environment of Earth? Because that's not so. How would these the human inhabitants of the colonies on the moon and Mars live? He never ever touches that subject whatsoever. So that's something that's very strange. But going back to this, Tompkins described he designed for Apollo missions and Nova. He says that engineered I conceived dozens of missions and spaceship designs for exploratory operations to the planets that orbit our nearest stars. I designed a station to be built on Mars, massive Nova vehicles and equatorial launch facilities. I also designed multiple 2,000-man military bases for our moon. I designed the checkout and launch test system for the Apollo Moon Saturn V, and the command control moon vehicle, a near complete redesign for the major facilities operations for the entire launch control. Okay, but again, he does not tell us how they have solved the problems of everyday existence on the moon and Mars. Now, during the Apollo 11 moon landing in July '69, Tompkins said he was in the NASA Launch Operations Center at Cape Canaveral as part of a large GRW contingent. He states that television cameras from the Apollo lander provided a live feed of what was being witnessed by Armstrong and Aldrin, and Tompkins explained how Armstrong and Aldrin were met by a fleet of extraterrestrial spaceships that were ominously close to the Apollo lunar lander. The landing module, the LEM, actually impacted the moon surface in the Sea of Tranquility crater, which had tremendous sized vehicles parked around the rim and parts of its rim. When astronaut Neil Armstrong made the first step for man on the moon, he looked up at the edge of the crater and said to Mission Control, quote, "There are other ships here. They are enormous." The public did not hear that statement, nor see the massive alien starships. Armstrong panned his camera in a 360-degree motional all around the crater, and the CIA then classified the information as way above top secret, end quote. This is as on his book, Selected by Extraterrestrials, page 418. And Tompkins drew a picture of what he witnessed on the Apollo live feed camera along with other TRW and NASA personnel. And it's the drawing of the NASA live feed of starships at the edge of Sea of Tranquility crater, the menacing Apollo 11 astronauts. And now how has this extraterrestrial action effectively put an end to the covert Navy plan ending support for the Apollo program, described by Tompkins? Again, on Selected by Extraterrestrials, page 428, it says, the extraterrestrials put up their no trespassing sign but allowed us to make several other additional Apollo landings to pick up a few rocks and play in the sand, the action of the extraterrestrials stopping our plans to build our manned naval base on the moon. And Tompkins claims he saw what he claims he saw happen via the NASA live feed to the moon landing is consistent with ham radio intercepts of the live feed and the claims that former NASA employee Otto Bender, and according to Bender, the Apollo 11 astronauts transmitted that they were being watched by large alien vehicles. Bender confirmed that ham radio operators had indeed intercepted VHF signals transmitted from Apollo 11 to NASA's Houston headquarters with the following message which NASA screened from the public. Mission Control, what's there? Mission Control calling Apollo 11. Apollo 11. These babes are huge, sir, enormous. Oh God, you wouldn't believe it, I'm telling you. There are other spacecraft out there, lined up on the far side of the crater edge. They're on the moon watching us, end quote. In an August 27, 2012 blogspot, Dr. Stephen Greer revealed that he spoke with close relatives of both Armstrong and Aldrin, who had been told the truth about what the astronauts had seen on the moon. And he said close friends and very close family members, both of Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin, separately told me that indeed there were numerous large UFOs around the crater where the lunar module landed, and that these were seen by both Armstrong and Aldrin. I have also spoken to military officers that have seen the footage of this event, but it has never been made public. And this is on Bended Reality, and there's more there if you want to read them, what went on, and what can I tell you? Perhaps this is why they never went back, and of course the colonies were never established. Now we know that they will be going back. NASA has a program to put men on the moon and keep them there as a colony, and we'll see what happens. It seems, though, that a lot of people have a lot of questions concerning the moon missions and what has been revealed to us, what has been kept secret from us. There seems to be more questions that are unanswered, and even the physical possibility of crossing the Van Allen belts to get to the moon, let alone surviving there. How would you have your resources? Where would you get your resources to live there, to have a permanent colony there? There's just so much to be answered. And William Tompkins, as I said, never ever touched that subject, how they would sustain the colonies on the moon and Mars and elsewhere. Anyway, tell me what you think about this. Thank you. If you'd like to join me on my Patreon account, you will hear content not covered by mainstream media. These riveting stories will be based on my research, and I will state my opinions and give my personal insight on diverse and controversial subjects and world events not covered by mainstream media, and not supported by YouTube guidelines. So whatever I have on my Patreon, most of those will not be on my YouTube channel. Please consider becoming a member today. More of the most significant and important videos will be on my Patreon channel. Your support helps me to continue my research and keeps this YouTube channel alive. And we depend on your support, your generous charity, because we help economically challenged families here in Athens, Greece, in Kapota, and we also help the young generation with university tuition and the community around our church. Thank you.